I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support.
Hey y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my May wrap up and my June TBR. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I participated in the May the 1st Read With You Readathon. So to start this video off, I'm going to be talking about my progress in the Readathon. My character reached the top of the dark side. I became a Dark Lord of the Sith who's also an Ewok, and I spied on the light side. So the abilities that I gained in this readathon include Drain Knowledge, which was read a book over 600 pages, and this counted for 2 of the prompts. Transfer Essence, read a book off of someone else's TBR. Force Lightning, read a book you're shocked you haven't read yet. Telekinesis is what I use to spy on the light side, which means that you can use a prompt from the other side. So I used the Transfer Force, which was a borrowed book. I used it from the library. I gained my Ewok species by reading a graphic novel, and I had not 1, not 2, but all 3 weapons. A lightsaber, you look at the color wheel and read a book, the cover opposite your favorite color. The blaster, read a book in a different spot every time you open it. And the spaceship, read a book with a vehicle on the cover. So those are all of my prompts that I gained in the May the 4th Read With You Readathon. My character is decked out. The only thing that my character is missing is some help, some partners, and I just couldn't get those in May. So now I'm going to talk about the books that I did finish in May. Keep all of these prompts in mind, and let's see if you can figure out what books fit which prompts for me. So in May, I finished a total of 9 books, 1 graphic novel, and 1 essay, which is amazing because it was like we had like 2 weeks left in May, and I was freaking out thinking I hadn't gotten anything read. It felt like there was no hope for me in May, but I found hope at last. It was also a really great reading month. I had 5 stars, 1 4.5 star, 2 4 stars, 1 3.5 star, and 1 3-star book. We're gonna now talk about the books very quickly that I finished in May, and I'm gonna try out something different now. For books and reads that I had a non-spoiler quote from the book that I jotted down, I'm going to be including those here in my quick reviews. So the essay that I finished in May was our Joan Didion essay of the month. Goodbye to all of that. This is about the dream that is New York City. And my quote that I have here is, "It is easy to see the beginning of things and harder to see the ends," which is kind of ironic because this was the end of the Slouching Towards Bethlehem collection in this book, and so it was the end of that collection. Now this month in June, we're starting a new collection, which I'll get to in just a moment, but I really enjoyed this essay. There's something that Joan Didion does with her writing that just captures the atmosphere and the being of a place so well. The graphic novel that I finished was Ghoul Goblin, part of the Dresden series. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a little bit of a mess, but I still loved every bit of it. Now the books that I finished, these are just going to go in order of when I finished them because that's where I had my notes from. So bear with me because there's a lot. Thy Father's Glass by Jeffrey Harrison. This one I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. The story was sentimental to me because 2 of my grandparents died of Alzheimer's, and the main character was dealing with a parent who is dying of Alzheimer's. But there was a weird formatting issues going on here, and to be honest, I was a little bit bitter because this was supposed to be part of my self-pub Sundays, and turns out it's not self-pub. So I had to cancel that episode, so it's feeling a little bit bitter. But one book that is self-pub that I absolutely loved was Buzzard's Bowl by John Palladino. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. This is the second book in the Tragedy of Sedan series, and I absolutely loved everything about it. I've done a review which I'll link down below. John Palladino took what he did in Trials of Ashmount and made it even better in this book, and I can't wait to see where this story goes in this series. My quote from Buzzard's Bowl was, "Throughout life, we'll encounter many regrets, but it's not about wishing how we could have altered them. It's about coping with the results we've created." And I just love that quote. Another 5-star read for me in May was Wistful Ascending by J.C.M. Byrne. Now this was one of my Self-Pub Sunday books, and I loved it all. It was a little bit of a slow start, but once it got going, it did not slow down. It had amazing characters. I can't wait to see where the story goes. I'm hoping to fit book 2 and book 3 in very soon. I know J.C.M. Byrne is working on book 4 right now, and I can't wait to see where everything goes. And my quote from this book was, "Every death takes something away from the world," and that just stuck with me so much. Next up is, speaking of amazing characters, Symphony of Secrets by Brendan Slocum. Now this book I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters in it. There were certain choices that were made in the writing of it that I didn't like, and that's why I gave it 4.5 and not 5 stars. But Josephine is one of my favorite characters I've read this year, and I would read an entire book just about her. The quote that I have from this book, "Once, passing a scorched jumble of bricks and ancient stone, she saw what she thought was a doll's hand, buried in the wreckage, reaching up toward the sky. The image haunted her. She wasn't sure if she saw it as a symbol of Antwerp or of herself." And that just gives me goosebumps reading it. It gives me all of the feels. I kind of want to reread this book just to get Josephine again. If you haven't read it but you're a big fan of the Violin Conspiracy, I highly recommend it. And at some point, hopefully soon, I'm going to have Brendan Slocum on the channel, so I can't wait for that discussion. Next up, another 5-star read for me, A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. This is my favorite book in A Song of Ice and Fire series so far. I thought it was amazing. My mind was completely blown, and I thought it really showcased our characters in a perfect way. And my quote from Storm of Swords, that is spoiler free, "What good was it to be the son of a rich and powerful house if you were the 9th son?" And that just made me laugh. Next up, we have The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. This was book 5 in the Wheel of Time series. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Parts of it were a bit slow for me, but the ending was just spectacular. And I've already gotten into book 6, and I am ready for this story to see where it goes. Just a couple more here. Full Moon by Jim Butcher. This is book 2 in the Dresden series. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I love the Dresden series. I love everything about it. This series is like book crack to me. It's like book candy. I can't get enough of it. It's becoming one of my favorite series of all time, and I just need more Dresden. The quote I took from this one, "There's more magic in a baby's first giggle than in any firestorm a wizard can conjure up." And I just love that, because there's just something about that first giggle from a baby, or just a baby's giggle in general, that is just so special. Just 2 books left in my wrap up. Can Holding and a Fart Kill You? This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Although I learned a lot of interesting things, it had no humor and no citations, and I've done a dedicated review for this as part of the Books My Boyfriend Gave Me series, which I will link in the description below. And the last book that I finished in May is Snuff by Terry Pratchett. This is our last book in the City Watch series in the Discworld universe. This one I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I loved everything about this, but young Sam was the star of this book. He's shown so well in this book. And because it's Terry Pratchett and I couldn't resist, I actually have 2 quotes from this one. The first one made me laugh because it resonates. It brings me back to Jane Austen, and you'll know exactly why once I read it. But in, I think it's Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen has a very, very well-known first line of her book. This quote from Snuff is, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a man without a lot of wood must be in want of a wife who can handle a great big," and then it cuts off. And this quote made me laugh for 2 reasons. One, the kind of throwback to Jane Austen with the truth universally acknowledged, that bit, but then also just what it's talking about and the ending of that sentence, that it's cut off and it leaves it, if you don't read the rest of it, to your imagination. And then the second quote I have is one that hit me deep in the core because it's so true and yet so tragic and sad, and is so true. The quote says, "It's true that some of the most terrible things in the world are done by people who genuinely think that they are doing it for the best, especially if there is some good involved." So that was my May wrap up. Now let's talk about the books that are going to carry over from May into June. These include, of course, Middlemarch by George Eliot. This one is my weekend reading, so it's going slow, but I'm enjoying it. Dictator by Robert Harris. This is book 3 in the Cicero trilogy, and although it feels very different than the first 2 books for me, I'm still enjoying it a lot. The Voyage of the Forgotten, which is the last book in the Mercenary Kings trilogy. This one also feels different, but I am enjoying being in this world again. B is for Bigfoot, which is a short story as part of the Dresden series. I started this at the very end of May, and so I finished it on June 1st, so it's done now by the time you see this, but technically it carried over into June, so I'm counting it. And then I'm actually buddy reading an audiobook with John. I Can't Make This Up by Kevin Hart. This is his first book and it's hilarious. This is a reread for me, but we started the audiobook when we were on our way to Asheville, and now we've just got to finish it up. I think we're about halfway through that book, and we're both really enjoying that one. It's basically like his stand-up comedy, but in audiobook format. So now let's talk about my June TBR. Now, of course, I'm filming this on June 4th, so some of these books I've actually started by now, and I'm hoping to finish them very soon. So I tried to limit my June TBR. It kind of got a little bit out of control, but I tried to limit it somewhat. So we've got Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan, of course, book 6 in the Wheel of Time series for a read-along and the live shows. I'm into the prologue now. I'm almost done with the prologue for that, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm still trying to figure out why all of this is in a prologue and not in the regular text. So I'm sure I'll find out once I get into chapter 1. No Heart for a Thief by James Lloyd Doolin. This is part of my Self Pub Sunday series. This author will be on my channel for Self Pub Sundays on this coming Sunday, June 11th, so I can't wait for that. This is a dark fantasy with 2 different timelines, and it really goes into the themes of magic and religion. And then I've got hopefully 2 books by Michael Roberti for my second Self Pub Sunday episode. I'm going to be reading The Revenge of Thousands, which is his prequel, I think, novella to The Traitors We Are, which is his main first book in the series. I believe he's working on book 2 right now, if I'm not mistaken. I also have A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin, of course, book 4 in the Song of Ice and Fire series. After I finish book 3, I am ready to move on with that series. I've got my patron pick of the month picked by Sharon. This is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I'm going to be doing a reading vlog for my Clan Fraser patrons, the top tier patrons. and I'm really excited for this book. I've changed a little bit how I do my patron picks, and they have a list of all the books that I own that I haven't read yet, and they're to pick off of there, which is a gazillion books, so there's no problem picking books, I don't think. But A River Enchanted was a book of the month pick that I had last year, the year before, I think it was the year before that, 2 years ago now. This is about a grumpy musician who's summoned home, heiress striving to solve a sinister mystery, captain who will do anything to protect his clan, and a devout healer who must mend that which seems deeply broken. And this is from a Goodreads post by Rebecca Ross, the author here. I can't wait to read this. I'm told it's about Scottish folklore, and I'm really, really excited to get to this one. We also have Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. So because I finished the City Watch series, next up I'm going to be starting the Witches series, and according to Alan and a couple other people, technically Equal Rights is the first book in that series. So I'm going to be starting with that, and I can't wait. Grave Peril by Jim Butcher, book 3 in the Dresden series. Of course, I need to get that candy and that book candy, get some more Dresden in. Unmasking Autism, Discovering the New Faces of Neurodiversity by Devin Price. This book was a book that a coworker said he needed someone to talk to about, and he knew I was a big reader and I have this channel, so I said, yeah, I'll read it along with you, and he's already read it. I've just gotten the library loan for it, so I've started this, and it's really, really interesting. It's about people that essentially mask their autism symptoms and, quirks and tics and whatnot, to avoid the stigmatism of diagnosis, and it's just really interesting to read and learn about. And then the last one on this list is our Joan Didion Essay of the Month. We're going into a new collection now, the White Album, and our Essay of the Month for June is actually titled The White Album. And in this essay is where we get the title for this book as a whole. We tell ourselves stories in order to live, and I can't wait for this, because if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong about this, we'll see once I start reading it, I think this is one of my favorite collections of hers, so I can't wait. So that's my May wrap up and my June TBR. Let me know in the comments below, what was the favorite book that you read in May? What are you looking forward to reading the most in June? As always, my Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Keep reading, and I love y'all to the moon and back. Bye.